Hey, what is going on Twintendo Nation? Hope you're having an awesome day. Today we're going to be going over the top 5 Pokemon that I think need a Gigantamax form. If you guys don't know what Gigantamax forms are, it's essentially basically the Mega Evolution for Pokemon Generation 8. We obviously know there's Dynamaxing, which is when your Pokemon turn giant, but Gigantamax forms are essentially when the Pokemon turn even bigger and they actually change their form as well. Now there are some rumoured Pokemon that will be getting Gigantamax forms. I won't be covering them in the video. I'm assuming a lot of you guys know who they are. So these are just 5 different Pokemon that I would love to see get a Gigantamax form for Pokemon Sword and Shield or in the future. So if you do enjoy today's video guys, a like is super appreciated. Helps out the channel more than you could know, and if you want to stay up to date with everything Pokemon Sword and Shield and Animal Crossing New Horizons, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Also, question of the day to you guys, what Pokemon would you like to see get a Gigantamax form? Would it be a Pokemon that never got a Mega Evolution in Generation 6 that probably should have? Or is it a Pokemon that you just think would look really good as a giant Pokemon and obviously has a few different design changes? Let me know in the comments below which Pokemon you're thinking of. And without further ado guys, let's start this video. So starting us off at number 5 is probably the most obvious Pokemon to get a Gigantamax form, but I wanted to start the video with it, and this is of course Tyranitar. Tyranitar is clearly based off Godzilla, which is basically the king of kaiju, and if you guys don't know what kaiju is, it's essentially just giant monsters fighting each other, and of course like I said, Tyranitar being based off Godzilla, it just makes the most sense. Now in terms of Pokemon that need Gigantamax forms, there are a few Pokemon on this list that probably need them because they didn't get a Mega. For Tyranitar's case, it obviously has a Mega Evolution, but I wanted to include it because it would just feel pretty wrong without having Gigantamax forms, you know, with kaiju kind of Pokemon, without basically the king of kaiju himself, Tyranitar. So I think a lot of us can agree that Tyranitar probably needs a Gigantamax form, even though, like I said, it got its Mega Evolution back in Pokemon X and Y. So what could Gigantamax Tyranitar look like? Well, Fiery Dino Piranha, who we're going to be mentioning quite a few times in this video, has come up with a design that I absolutely love. Now, we don't know at the moment whether Gigantamax Pokemon, you know, will take on their Mega Evolution forms. I'm assuming since Leon has a Charizard as his Pokemon, who's basically the Pokemon champion, I think Charizard's going to have an exclusive Gigantamax form. So I think it's fair to say that Tyranitar's design will look a bit different to its Mega Evolution, so it won't have all that armor plating. And basically, this design is very similar to Godzilla. And before anybody exposes me, I am not an expert on Godzilla by any means, or any of like kaiju films. But this Tyranitar design is similar to Godzilla because Godzilla has a lot of like spikes on its back. There's probably a better terminology for that, and when it uses an attack which I've read up called Atomic Breath, basically kind of like a radioactive laser beam, the spikes on its back light up, and I can see this probably happening with Tyranitar here. It's got those pink spikes on the back. I think it's a really cool design, definitely inspired by Godzilla, and I think it would fit very well as a Gigantamax form for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Next up at number 4 is a Pokemon that's never had a Mega Evolution and maybe doesn't necessarily need one, although we saw Garchomp and Salamence get Mega Evolutions when they didn't really need it. But the reason I want this Pokemon to get a Gigantamax form is because there's a kaiju monster that looks very similar. So this Pokemon is Hydreigon. Now Hydreigon, the 5th generation dragon, one of the best designed Pokemon out there. I feel like it is a bit underrated compared to a lot of dragon Pokemon, not in terms of strength and stuff, but I feel like it just doesn't get the limelight it deserves, and I feel like it could have had a Mega Evolution when we look at like Tyranitar, Garchomp, Salamence getting all these Mega Evolutions, and it's kind of just been a bit forgotten about. Now the reason why I think Hydreigon would have a great Gigantamax form is because in a recent Godzilla film, the main antagonist, King Ghidorah, looks very similar to Hydreigon. Now this kaiju monster was created in the 60s, so there is potential that Hydreigon was modelled around it, although remember Hydreigon in the beta of Pokemon Black and White was supposed to be a tank, so maybe there's just a bit of coincidence in its similarities, but it's essentially a 3-headed Hydra kind of dragon thing, King Ghidorah. It was basically the highlight of a very average film for me, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I could really see Hydreigon kind of changing its form. Instead of having the 1 head and 2 kind of mouth arms, it would have 3 dragon heads and maybe stand on 4 legs. I think it would make sense that a Pokemon that big would stand on 4 legs rather than 2. But basically, Fiery Dino Piranha, again, who did the Gigantamax Tyranitar, has done another design. By the looks of it, this design, it has 2 legs, I think, Hydreigon, and then uses 2 tails to balance itself out. I think this design looks really good. Maybe I would prefer it to have maybe some front arms you know, up round the side, its wings, or maybe just 4 legs. Or, I mean, it is fine how it is. I definitely wouldn't complain if it looks like this. I just love the 3-headed dragon concept. And yeah, I think Hydreigon would be a perfect fit for Gigantamax form. Coming in at number 3 is the final Pokemon I'm going to be comparing to a kaiju monster, and this is Volcarona, which is obviously very comparable to Mothra, which is a fan favourite. And I think Volcarona, we could say, is a fan favourite Pokemon. Again, from 5th generation, it seems to be a bit forgotten about recently. It's one of the best Pokemon, in my opinion, from 5th generation, and just maybe of all time. I love its moveset, its design, and also finding it in Pokemon Black and White. A lot of us at first thought it was a legendary Pokemon, because you could find one, basically, at level 70. And so we were all like, oh, this is very similar to like Rayquaza in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, you know, Giratina, all that. Basically like the 3rd legendary you'd find in Pokemon games. And we all thought, is this it? And no, it's not. But it is a very, very good Pokemon. And obviously this thing hasn't had a Mega Evolution. Probably could do with one. It's still a good Pokemon without it. So Gigantamax form, I think this will definitely happen. Mothra is one of the most popular kaijus out there. Probably just behind Godzilla, maybe even level, it's hard to say. But yeah, Mothra, very, very popular. And it's also just incredibly iconic. So Volcarona would honestly be the best fit for, you know, a Mothra lookalike kind of. So I definitely think this will happen. I'll be so surprised. And I think it would be a fantastic Gigantamax Pokemon. And once again, we have another great design by Fiery Dino Piranha. It kind of looks very similar to Volcarona that we know, but it has enough changes to make it look very similar to Mothra. I honestly really love all the designs that Fiery Dino Piranha has done. If you like their art, make sure to check them out in the link in the description. But yeah, Volcarona would definitely have a great Gigantamax form. So now on to number 2. We're not going to be talking about kaiju monsters anymore. These are Pokemon that I just feel like deserve a Gigantamax form because they didn't really get a Mega Evolution and they probably needed it more than a lot of other Pokemon. So starting us off, this is kind of a cheat answer, but I feel like I couldn't pick one over the other, and this is the Generation 2 starters. So originally, I was going to include both Generation 4 and Generation 2 starters in this video. I feel very confident that Generation 4 starters, like the final forms, obviously, like Empoleon, Torterra, and Infernape, will get Gigantamax forms when Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes come out, which is either going to be next year or 2 years from now. So yeah, I expect the Generation 4 starters to get a Gigantamax form. But what about Generation 2 starters? They missed out on Mega Evolution, which was slightly weird. It went from Generation 1 getting Megas to Generation 3. Now the reason why this was Generation 1, no matter how much this annoys me, and I started with Generation 1, it will always get the most love, which is kind of understandable. It's like a lot of people's favourite generation. And Generation 3 starters got Megas because Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire was coming out around that time when Megas were the new thing. So Generation 2 kind of got awkwardly skipped. And I feel like Generation 2 is going to get skipped again, and it's just going to be like the only generation left. So I feel like I would be very happy if Pokemon for once just ignored Generation 1 starters getting Gigantamax forms, even though, let's be honest, with Leon the champion having a Charizard, it's most likely that that's going to get an exclusive Gigantamax form, but I would love to see Generation 2 and Generation 4 starters getting Gigantamax forms this time around. And there's some really cool designs of what Gigantamax Generation 2 starters could look like by Elite Four. I love these designs because, you know, Meganium, Typhlosion and Feraligatr, they don't look too drastically different, but they have enough changes to make them look, you know, like this is what their Mega Evolutions could look like. And, you know, I think as a Gigantamax form, these would work really well. So hopefully Generation 2 gets some love this time around. Even though I do love Generation 1, I'll be very frustrated if it's just Generation 1 getting love again and not Generation 2, because I feel like we kind of need to give other Pokemon a chance to get some new forms. And finally, my number 1 Pokemon that I would love to see get a Gigantamax form, and this is a big personal opinion of mine. This is Flygon. Flygon is one of my favourite Pokemon of all time. I know a lot of people out there love Flygon. It's just a bit different to all the other Dragon Pokemon for me. It's not as strong as, say, Salamence and Garchomp, yet they get Mega Evolutions, which didn't really make much sense. And they were planning to give Flygon a Mega, and yeah, Ken Sugimori, who was basically designing the Pokemon, said he couldn't really come up with an idea for Flygon, which was disappointing. I feel like I've seen a lot of good fan art Megas of Flygon, but maybe even they wouldn't be up to the standard of Pokemon. So it's kind of hard to think, you know, why couldn't they change Flygon enough to give it a Mega Evolution? And I feel like now that it's been basically 4 or 5 years since Pokemon Omega Ruby, when they were planning to, give Flygon Omega Evolution. I feel like they could have come up with a design by now. So an example of a Gigantamax Flygon comes from the Drake. And yeah, I really like this design because it has kind of like wing blades on its elbows. Its chest has like eyes as well, which is quite menacing. And it just looks, quite a bit different from the usual Flygon. And like I said, Flygon is not the strongest dragon Pokemon out there. It probably does need a Gigantamax form more than a lot of Pokemon. It probably doesn't need it the most out of all the Pokemon, but it's definitely up there for me on a personal level. And I think it would make a lot of sense because of its overall stats. So yeah, for me, my number 1 pick, it has to be Flygon. So guys, those are the top 5 Pokemon that I think need a Gigantamax form. Let me know in the comments below which Pokemon you'd love to see get a Gigantamax form. It doesn't, necessarily have to be one that needs one. It just might be one that you have a personal preference that you'd like to see. And if you did enjoy today's video, a like on the video is really, really appreciated. Helps out the channel more than you can know. And if you want to stay up to date with everything Pokemon Sword and Shield, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below to become a part of the Twintendo Nation. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, hope you have an awesome day, and I will see you on the next video. Peace!